It wouldn't be so tragic if she was just like, and now I'm done.
I'm Sadie Guinness, and I'm going to explain what the just happened in The Haunting of Bly Manor. Bly Manor is based on the work of Victorian author Henry James, whose horror story The Turn of the Screw provided a lot of the inspiration. Like in the book, Bly Manor follows a young woman, Dani Clayton, who takes a job as an au pair at a remote British estate taking care of two young and very unusual orphans, Miles and Flora. And if you didn't already assume, Bly Manor is also haunted as But it turns out Dani is already super familiar with ghosts because she's already being haunted by the ghost of her ex-fiancé Edmund. Dani and Edmund were childhood sweethearts in America and they were engaged, but she broke it off because even though she loved him, it wasn't the right kind of love because Dani's gay.
Why are you doing this to me?
Angry and confused at Dani for ending things, Edmund storms out of the car and immediately gets hit by a truck and dies. Edmund's body isn't even cold before he begins haunting Dani, and he follows her all the way to England. This backstory is drawn straight from Henry James's short story, Edmund Orme. It features a ghost who haunts the woman who jilted him in the hopes that doing so will prevent her daughter from hurting someone in the same way. And while Dani's guilt over Edmund's death and the trauma of being f***ing haunted nearly prevents Dani's romance with Bly's groundskeeper Jamie, Dani decides to fight for her love. She burns Edmund's glasses in a bonfire and proves she is not going to break Jamie's heart the way she did Edmund's, finally allowing him to pass on or at least stop haunting her and f***ing with her. But even once Dani rids herself of Edmund, there are still plenty of other ghosts to contend with. Specifically, the ghosts of Henry's former valet, Peter Quint, and the previous au pair, Rebecca Jessel, who had both died at Bly the year before. These two were the central villains in The Turn of the Screw, with the pair set on corrupting Miles and Flora, but things are not so simple in Bly Manor.
We're all inherently complicated and we're all flawed in some more than others. I love the way that they handled Peter in the show and Jessel and that love story because it's brutal, but I feel like it's very honest.
You don't get to talk to me like that again.
No, never.
Peter is Rebecca's partner, but he's also abusing her. But she's seeing the humanity. So to represent him as just this villain, then we don't seeing fully what these kind of people present that allows the relationship to continue.
Peter and Rebecca were dating prior to their deaths, but theirs was a super toxic relationship, with Rebecca losing pieces of herself to the controlling Peter. And after Peter's mom shows up to shake him down for money,
I don't have any money.
threatening to expose his juvenile record to his boss, Peter starts stealing from Henry.
Of course he has.
But he also planned on taking a lot of that money and running away to America with Rebecca, who had no idea that he was embezzling and shady as f***.
I thought I said go back.
But before this can happen, Peter is killed by the oldest ghost at Bly, their very own Lady in the Lake, Viola. Bly's entire 8th episode is dedicated to explaining the origins of Viola in a plot ripped straight from James's story, The Romance of Certain Old Clothes. As viewers discover, Bly became cursed in the 1600s after Viola was murdered by her sister Perdita. But Viola's will proved to be so strong that she completely denied the pull of the afterlife, keeping her spirit in a trunk that was filled with all of Viola's nicest jewels and clothes that were intended as an inheritance for her daughter Isabel. But when Perdita betrayed her sister once again, opening the trunk to sell the clothes rather than give them to Isabel, Viola's ghost strangled Perdita to death. Now a widower twice over, Viola and Perdita's ex-husband Arthur Lloyd assumed the trunk to be cursed, but then he threw it in the lake, trapping Viola there. Still hoping to reunite with her daughter one day, Viola would wake up, walk the grounds of Bly looking for Isabel, return to the lake, and fall asleep when she would forget everything until she started the whole process again. She would also kill anyone who happened to cross her path, including the plague doctor, vicar, soldier, the young boy, and of course Peter. She basically rewrote the rules of reality to bend to her will that kept her spirit there and that created this paranormal gravity, which is why all of the other ghosts got stuck.
Well, there's
Once Peter realizes he's dead, he learns the terrifying curse of Bly, which is that everyone who dies there remains trapped on the grounds forever and slowly fades away, losing all of their memories, their identity, and even their faces. Terrified of this happening, Peter comes up with an evil plan to escape this fate and to bring Rebecca with him. Peter tricks Rebecca into letting him take full possession of her and then exploits her trust by taking this opportunity to drown Rebecca in the lake. And then he just leaves her to die alone. He killed her, and then he could not even hold her hand in death, and then just disappeared. Although Rebecca is devastated by this betrayal and her death, she eventually reconciles with Peter enough to work with him on grooming Miles and Flora to be their host bodies. Rebecca and Peter begin visiting the children and asking them to play a game where Miles and Flora get tucked away in memories while Rebecca and Peter possess them, which explains all of those times the kids are acting strange.
I want an actual bloody drink!
This dream hopping is a way to lure Miles and Flora into submission, while Peter and Rebecca lay the groundwork to convince the kids to invite them in fully, creating a loophole that would allow Peter and Rebecca to leave Bly. In Peter's mind, best case scenario, him and Rebecca are brother and sister forever? How? But as time goes on, Peter and Rebecca also find themselves slipping away more and more into their own dreams. And while Rebecca often visits some of her favorite memories with Peter, he is trapped in a actual hell. Serves him right. Oh, speaking of Hannah, my girl! Peter and Rebecca aren't the only ones who are fading away.
I'm a little discombobulated today.
The live-in housekeeper and the true scene stealer of the season, Hannah Grose, also keeps slipping into memories, although she doesn't even realize she's dead. It turns out that just before Dani had arrived at Bly, Hannah had discovered that Peter's ghost was influencing Miles, so Peter possessed Miles and shoved Hannah down a well, killing her. When it was shown that that is literally what had happened right when Dani showed up, and that it was a full loop there. But much like Viola, Hannah's will is so strong that she just denies this morbid reality and carries on as though nothing had happened. It's only after Peter forces Hannah to look at her own body that she starts to accept that she's dead.
You need to look.
She does not let this stop her. With some help from herself in the form of her not-so-secret love Owen,
You are Hannah Grose. The year is 1987.
Hannah gets the courage to face reality and try and help save Owen and the children before it's too late for them too.
She promised their mother, Charlotte, that she would take care of them. And I think when you make a promise to a child, it carries such weight. I think that was very true for Hannah.
I only advice for you, Hannah.
Also, loving this man, but never been able to act on it. She wanted to make sure that he got away, that they would live.
What are you doing here?
But while Hannah is still struggling to accept her fate, Peter and Rebecca move forward with their plan. Peter convinces Miles to fully invite him in,
Josh.
with the promise that Miles will now be tucked away in a memory with both of his dead parents. Rebecca is supposed to do the same with Flora, but they only pretend to do it in the hopes of giving Dani and Flora a chance to escape Bly. But Dani and Flora do not even make it past the driveway before Dani is taken by Viola. However, enough of Viola still remembers this impulse to find her daughter, and so when she sees Flora, she drops the au pair and takes the girl instead, mistaking her for Isabel. But before Viola can take Flora into the lake, Dani says the one thing that will get her to release the child.
It's you!
She invites the Lady of the Lake into herself fully, saying the mantra that Viola first said to Isabel. Dani not only saves Flora, but breaks the curse on Bly, and all the ghosts are finally able to pass on to the afterlife. But not before Hannah shares a message to Owen, finally expressing her love for him, and including a sweet nod to Hill House's best line.
And the rest, well, it's just...
Peter also apologizes to Miles right before he disappears, but I'm sorry is not enough to make up for trying to possess his body forever and erase his existence.
I don't think he ever forgave Peter for what he did. It's a bit too late because he's been trapped with his parents, and when he sees him saying sorry, he doesn't know if he's still there or if it's real life.
Although the horror is over for everyone else, Dani can still feel Viola inside her and knows that one day the Lady of the Lake will fully claim her.
I'm actually pretty in love with you, it turns out.
But if love was all it would have taken to save Dani, she would have lived a long and happy life with Jamie. But after years of living happily together in America after leaving Bly, Dani begins seeing Viola's reflection everywhere and finds herself slipping away more and more.
Yeah, I'm good.
Dani tries to deny how serious things have gotten and wants to just keep taking things day by day. But after Dani wakes up nearly choking Jamie to death, Dani realizes she can't risk Jamie's life any longer. So in the middle of the night, Dani leaves and returns to Bly, where she drowns herself in the lake. As a result, Dani and Viola merge to become the new Lady of the Lake, who still wakes and walks, but no longer takes anyone with her.
It is tragic, but it also is kind of the way of the world. I think that can actually be quite a good thing, or a positive, position that she's found herself living in for eternity, because she certainly found a lot of fulfillment, I think, in being a caretaker and a protector in her living life.
Like Owen, who never stopped loving Hannah, Jamie never stops loving Dani. And many years later, when she attends the wedding of the now grown Flora in 2007,
leaving the only trace of who she once was,
Jamie tells the story of Bly and her romance with Dani to Owen, Henry, Miles, Flora, and some other wedding guests. But no one other than Owen and Henry, like not even Miles and Flora, realize that Jamie is talking from personal experience. That's because as the kids grew up, they forgot everything that happened at Bly, like even Hannah's entire existence, which is so f***ed up.
I think it's a good thing that they forgot the ghosts, the scary ones, but it is quite sad forgetting those really nice people who helped them along the way.
Life when they're older would be very different if they knew what happened when they were younger or if they didn't. So I think in a way, it's a good thing.
And when Jamie tells the story, she changes the names and just enough details to obscure the truth from them. One thing Jamie doesn't lie about, though, is that she is still waiting for Dani to return. We see her checking all of her reflections looking for Dani's face and leaving the door open a crack every night. What Jamie doesn't realize is that even though she can't see Dani, her love is always with her, as we see in the tender final shot of Dani's ghostly hand resting on Jamie's shoulder. But is that Dani's literal ghost, or does Jamie just always carry a piece of Dani with her in her memories?
It's essentially a manifestation of Jamie's belief that Dani is with her. I think there's a part of me that believes it's really there, and that it's Dani reaching out to Jamie now that she's had this purge and has been able to revisit everything that happened, that kind of allows Dani to come back to her in this moment. And I think that is a physical manifestation of that feeling.
This ending is so sweet, and I definitely weeped, ugly cried. But at the same time, this is probably not what any of us were expecting from Bly Manor, given that the turn of the screws, super bleak ending is maybe what it's most famous for. The Haunting of Bly Manor was definitely a love story more than anything else, but it still left us with a ton of burning questions. Is the place Flora got married actually Bly Manor? I know this sounds crazy, but just listen to me. The wedding that bookends the season does take place at a haunted manor, but it's in California and not England, so it could be very easy to dismiss this theory. Although, since Jamie is an unreliable narrator, we can't take anything she says as 100% true.
Well,
from everything we know about the rules of Bly, Dani's ghost would only be able to walk the grounds of the estate. So if they were at Bly for the wedding, that would explain why Jamie is sleeping in a chair right in front of the door, because she would be hoping that she would be in the path of Dani's nightly walk.
I love that as an idea. I had never considered that. I think it's that she always leaves a door open, is in the metaphysical sense and in the literal sense as well. I think she always tries to make sure that there's a way for Dani to contact her if ever she will. So that would be pretty cool if it was that Bly Manor was there, but I don't think it is.
We know all the ghosts at Bly were real, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything we saw in this show was. Henry's evil doppelganger could have very much been a self-imposed punishment, since he blamed himself for Dominic and Charlotte's death. Or maybe Dominic really did curse his brother when he found out that Henry was Flora's father.
He's a shit-grinning f***ing monster.
Is the doppelganger an actual curse or just guilt?
No, I think he was definitely a figment of Henry Wingrave's imagination. But his guilt and his shame is so deep that this thing almost manifests physically, for him. I guess the takeaway is, if it's real to you, then it's real enough, if it's getting in your way.
Why are Jamie and Owen never haunted?
It's hard to say.
Of everyone at Bly, Jamie and Owen are the only two people who are never touched by the darkness or the hauntings. And even at the end, when they see all the ghosts, they just kind of stand back and watch everything unfold rather than interact with the specters themselves. I don't think the reason they're immune is necessarily that they didn't live on the grounds, because Peter didn't live at Bly and he still got taken by Viola. There has to be a reason why Jamie and Owen were never haunted, but what could that reason be? Let us know in the comments below why you think Jamie and Owen were never haunted.